Hello, this is Professor Teresa Pelkie. This is Session 9, Part 1, Concepts of Joins. In this session, we'll get started with what is probably the most important feature of a relational database management system. That feature is referred to as a join, and it is used to join data from two or more tables together using one SQL statement. In this first video, I'll show you some of the issues that can be solved using a join. We'll continue to work with the world schema for now, since it is easy to work with and you should now be familiar with it. In the second video for this session, we'll work with the SQL syntax that is used to define a join. You'll see how to write SQL statements that can get data from two or more tables into a result set. To get started, let's take a look at what is meant by a relation when used in the context of a database management system. What you see here is data from two tables in the world schema, the country table on the left and the city table on the right. The select statements are shown above the result grids. In these examples, a select all is used, meaning that all of the columns are included and all of the rows are selected. Now the thing to notice here is that the country table on the left has a column named code. The code is a 3-character country code. The next column is the name, which is the name of the country. So what you have is a table that has a list of countries with a code and the complete name. Now look at the result grid on the right for the city table. This contains a name column, which in this table is the name of a city. It contains a country code column and some other columns. The code AFG is highlighted in the country table on the left, and the red line points to the 4 rows in the city table on the right. So what you see is that there are 4 cities in the city table that have the country code value AFG for Afghanistan. In the country table on the left, there is only one country with the code AFG. In fact, the MySQL database management system enforces a rule that allows only one instance of a particular code value in the country table. That means that the value AFG will be the code for only one country in the country table. The reason why there can be only one country with that code is because the code column is defined as the primary key, which has to contain a unique value across all of the rows in the table. So why does country code show up 4 times in the city table on the right? It turns out that the city table does not define any constraints on the country code column. That means that it can appear as many times as needed. In this example, the table contains 4 cities that are in Afghanistan, so the code AFG shows up 4 times. When you work with a relational database, you will almost always need to get data from more than one table when you run a select. This slide shows a result set of the city data, but look at what is shown on the right side. We have the country code and a new column named country name. Now, country name column is not defined in the city table. The country code column is defined, but not the country name. But this is an example of the type of thing that we need. We want to look at the data in the city table, but we also want to see the country name. A question you might have is, why not just put the country name into the city table to begin with? The main reason why that is not done is because it violates some of the fundamental factors of good database design. We'll touch on some of those factors later in this course. One of the most basic rules is that you don't repeat data in a secondary table if the data is defined in the primary table. In this case, the primary table is the country table. You would expect to see the country name in the country table. The city table is a secondary table. Rather than put the country name into the city table, you instead create a relation between the country table and the city table. In this example, the relation between the two tables is the country code. So assuming that we have the tables correctly designed so that the data from the primary table is not duplicated in the secondary table, what we need to do next is find out how to write SQL statements that will provide a result set like what we see here. We need to find out how to join data from one table with data in another table. Before getting into the actual SQL statements to perform a join, we'll look at a feature of MySQL Workbench that helps you visualize how tables in a schema are related. This is referred to as an EER diagram. EER stands for Enhanced Entity Relationship. This shows the three tables in the world schema. The tables are country on the left, city on the top right, and country language on the bottom right. It does not show the actual data, but it shows the column definitions. Now, just showing the columns in the three tables is okay, but you can also see the columns in the table definition tools that are part of the MySQL Workbench. The value of the EER diagram is that it shows the relationships between the tables. Now, in this example, it does not show all of the relationship data since the relations were not fully defined in the world schema, but the EER diagram was able to figure out that the city and country language tables are in a one-to-many relationship with the country table. One-to-many is a very common description of table relationships. It means that for each row in the primary table, there can be one or many related rows in the secondary tables. In fact, there can be 0 related rows in the secondary tables. For example, if there was a country that did not have any cities or any languages. The connecting lines indicate that the relationship is one-to-many. On the right side, where the connecting lines join the city and country language tables, you see that the connecting lines branches out. That is a standard way to indicate on the diagram that there are many possible rows related to a row in the country table. Now, there are a few things that you should notice before we leave this slide. First, in the country table, the column name that we will use to relate the tables is called code, the three-letter country code. In the city and country language tables, the equivalent column name is country code. As you'll see in the next video, the column names do not have to be the same when you create a join. Another thing to note is that the country table contains a column named name, and the city table also contains a column named name. The issue here is that if we want to create a join with those two tables, and we want both the country name and the city name to be part of the result set, we will need to provide a way to distinguish between the two columns that are named name. The URL shown at the bottom of this slide takes you to a web page that contains step-by-step instructions for creating the EER diagram in MySQL Workbench. You may want to work through those instructions. The instructions are very clear, the process is simple, and it only takes a few minutes. We may be working with EER diagrams again later in this course, so it is useful to know how to create the diagram. So here are two problems we are going to solve to get started using joins in SQL. The first problem is the most important. With two or more tables, a data element is in one table and a code is in another table. We need to be able to link or join or relate the two tables based on the value of the code so that we can also have access to the data element value. Think back to what I showed you earlier where you saw a result set of the city data that also showed the name of the country. In that example, the country code is in the city table and the data element value that we want, the country name, is only in the country table. The second problem we will solve is how to work with the data in two or more tables when the same column name is used. Again, using the country and city tables, both of those have a column named Name. In our join, we want both the country name and the city name to appear in the result set. So we will need some way to disambiguate or tell the difference between the two columns that are named Name. We'll solve both of those problems in the next video. In the next video, we'll work with the actual SQL statements that are used to create what is called an inner join. An inner join will be the first step in solving the problems that I described in this video.